Hey guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here. It's been a little while since I've done a Missed Opportunities video, so I wanted to do one today, but I am changing the format a little bit since the last time you saw a Missed Opportunities video. So if you've never seen one before, basically what I am doing here is I take a concept or a story idea from movies, television, or comic books, and I say, that's how it was done, this is how it could have been done a little bit differently. And if you are very familiar with my Missed Opportunities videos, this one is going to be a little bit different than the ones that I've done in the past. So let me know in the comments what you think of the new format for this video. And with no further ado, let's get on to the subject at hand. During the Mutant Massacre, the first big X-Men crossover in 1986, Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and Colossus were injured so severely that they were kinda sorta kicked off the team. Not in a bad way, but Kitty was so injured that everyone thought that she was going to die, so they couldn't really put these guys back in the field with such injuries. Shortly after the massacre, Chris Claremont, the writer of the X-Men and New Mutants at the time, replaced these guys with newer, inexperienced X-Men, Dazzler, Psylocke, Longshot, and eventually Havoc. Some of these characters, like Havoc and Dazzler, they had had experience doing the superhero thing before, but Claremont played it in such a way that although they may have been heroes for a while, they were very inexperienced in working with the team. Adding these characters also changed the dynamic for the X-Men who stayed on the team: Storm, Wolverine, and Rogue. Storm was the leader before the massacre, and she remained so afterwards, so she was the least changed. But Wolverine and Rogue, they were always the loner types who worked with the team, but they didn't really work well with the team. Before the massacre, if Wolverine had been incapacitated, you got the feeling that the rest of the team could handle the threat that they were fighting. But now Wolverine and Rogue were like crucial linchpins for the team. Wolverine was now more of a senior-ranking member than he had ever been before, although like Storm being leader before and after the massacre, Logan's character transformation was a long time coming. It was just much more noticeable after the massacre. And Rogue, her transformation was the most noticeable, as it wasn't all that long ago that she was the one that nobody liked because of her time with the Brotherhood of Mutants. So this was an amazing time in the X-Men comics. I like it quite a bit more than most people, but you can't deny that this fundamental shakeup was very interesting to read about, especially after the team had been pretty stable for a while now. Even Charles Xavier passing the torch to Magneto as headmaster didn't feel as earth-shattering as the post-Mutant Massacre lineup change. So if I like this period of X-Men comics so much, what is the missed opportunity here? Well, this is one that I'm very hesitant in saying that it should have happened, just because I am such a big fan of this era of X-Men comics. But my thinking was, when the Mutant Massacre happened, instead of taking on completely untrained members like Dazzler and Longshot and putting them in the deep end of the pool, why not recruit some of the New Mutants into the ranks of the team? This would have made the era of drastic change for both titles even more alarming. While the X-Men were going through changes after the Mutant Massacre, the New Mutants were stranded in two different possible futures, which is one reason why it would have been so hard to do this, since the X-Men had already taken on Dazzler, Longshot, and Psylocke by the time the New Mutants were back in the present day. So if this change had happened, it would have required a little bit of maneuvering in the Uncanny X-Men title, just so that we could move some of the New Mutants into that title after they had come back from time and space in their own title in issue 50. If it were up to me, I would have taken Danny Moonstar, Magic, and Karma and let them air quotes graduate from being students to now playing in the big leagues. These days, many different comic book creators talk about the New Mutants and say they're full-time 100% X-Men at this point. But that sounds kinda hollow when we only ever see them in their own spin-off team like X-Force, or reuniting to be in a New Mutants team once again, and never actually being on an X-Men team with other non-New Mutant X-Men, with the exception of Cannonball. So this would have been a great way to prove that, yeah, these kids are no longer in the junior division. They've moved up to the big leagues. Can they survive the experience? This would have also made much more sense from a character point of view, frankly. The New Mutants were young, yes, but not all that much younger than Dazzler and Psylocke, who even had a sorta lovey relationship with Doug Ramsey at the time. And the New Mutants were much better trained than any of the new characters who joined the X-Men at this time. I could easily see Wolverine arguing with Storm that, yes, they are young, but they're X-Men material and they need to join the team. So why these three specifically? For Danny, I would just love to see her butt heads with Wolverine and Storm all the time. She was the main leader of the New Mutants, but at heart, she was a stubborn firecracker who loved to challenge the authority of Professor X and Magneto. So it'd be a heck of a lot of fun to see her go from being in charge of her team to being lower in the hierarchy and no longer calling the shots. For magic, it just makes sense that the X-Men would want to use her very handy, useful power set. This was a time when the X-Men were more threatened than ever before by the Marauders, and there was this idea that they could still be hunted down by the Marauders even after the events of the Massacre. So having a teleporter on your team to replace Nightcrawler, and one who could teleport the entire team, this would be incredibly advantageous for the X-Men. And Karma, her powers are pretty handy as well. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, she was the oldest member of the New Mutants, so in playing with this idea that some of the students are air quotes graduating, that would just make sense that she would be moving on up into the main X-Men team. Now, not only would this have made a great deal of sense from a character point of view from the X-Men, but it would have been a really interesting time to be a fan of the New Mutants comic book series. Now, yes, I'm sure hardcore fans would gnash their teeth at this because their favorite characters were being split up, but in the same way that the X-Men title went through a huge change after the Massacre, it would have been really neat to see the New Mutants go through some severe changes as well. Cannonball was always the co-leader of the New Mutants, but he never really felt like he was leading the team. He was definitely second banana to Danny, and so it would have been really neat to see him be forced to step up and become the official leader of the team with Danny now in the X-Men. And with a few of their own members moved on up into the X-Men, who would be filling these holes in the New Mutants series? Well, this would have required some coordination with Louise Simonson, who was writing X-Factor at the time, and would soon go on to write New Mutants just a few months later. But I think this would have been the perfect time to switch Rusty Collins, Skids, and Boom Boom from X-Factor to the New Mutants series. By the time you got to Inferno, these kids were basically a separate entity from X-Factor anyway, so this would be just moving that timetable up a little bit further. And in the same way that in the Uncanny X-Men comics that we got, you had senior experienced X-Men, Rogue, Storm, and Wolverine dealing with rookies Dazzler, Psylocke, Longshot, and Havoc, this would be the same thing in the New Mutants. Rusty, Skids, and Boom Boom did not have nearly the same level of experience as the New Mutants. Of these three, Boom Boom and Rusty both had decent control over their powers, but hadn't really been in many battles, and so were still very much rookies compared to the rest of the New Mutants. So it'd be really neat to get to see the interactions between these characters, and a year or so before we finally did get to see them interact around the time of Inferno. And that's basically the extent of the missed opportunity that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I was a huge fan of X-Factor, New Mutants, and Uncanny X-Men around this time. So this isn't a situation where I'm saying that my idea absolutely should have happened compared to what they did at the time, because I really liked what they did at the time. I'm just saying that if they had gone this way, it would have been very interesting to see. So what do you guys think? Was this a very interesting idea or a very terrible idea? Let me know in the comments below. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you like the new way that I'm doing missed opportunities for a little while, let me know in the comments. Tell me if you like this new format or if you preferred it the old way. And if you did like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to come back later in the week, as I will be doing an entirely different kind of video later on. And until then, I will see you guys later. Have a great rest of the day.